Well, seeing as how it's 6:30, what do you think, Alicia? We get started?
See, we have most of our planning commissioners. I'm getting a call from Mark. 1 second. Okay, John, we just got a few more people that came in through the waiting room. So whenever you want to start.
Good evening, everybody. It's 6:31, so we'd like to get the Village of Oregon Joint Plan Commission Village Board meeting started. I will call this meeting to order for the Plan Commission. Does somebody need to call that in the same for the Village Board?
Sure, I can do that. So this is a joint meeting between the Village Board and the Planning Commission. Do you want me to do roll call, or do you want to do roll call first, John?
On the agenda, we've got Plan Commission, so let's just kind of follow what we've got, I guess. So we'll do roll call for Plan Commission, please.
Bano,
Here.
Molzon,
Here.
Severson,
Here.
Carpenter,
Here.
Schnelly, Meyer,
Here.
Smithback,
Here.
Marr,
Thank you.
Okay, so I will do the same for Village Board. This is October 1 joint public hearing for the Village Board and the Planning Commission. Joy, do you want to do roll call for the Village Board?
yes, Fowler, Stitch,
Here.
Horton,
Here.
Glish, Jacobson, Peterson,
Here.
and Carpenter. Are you still with us?
Here, yes, thanks.
And Jeannie, this is Mike. Jerry's at a county board meeting tonight, and Randy and Jenna are at a long fire district meeting. So they'll join. So Jenna and Randy will join us when they're done with their commission meeting.
Sounds good.
All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. There are none for us to review this evening, so we'll move right on. The next item is the community input opportunity. And this is a chance that we have for people that are in our audience tonight to give us a brief discussion or bring up a topic that might be important to them that is not on the agenda. If you are interested in talking on an agenda, we please ask you to wait until that agenda item comes up. But at this time, if somebody is in the audience that would like to speak on an item that is important to them, we would be happy to listen to you. All right. I don't see anybody asking to chat or to raise their hand or anything, so we'll keep moving on the agenda. Item 7 is an update on JC Park West, conceptual discussion, stand design presentation by Supreme Structures and Blake Hebert and Dan Bertler. Is somebody here? Is Blake or Dan here?
Yep, this is Blake Hebert from Supreme.
Hi, Blake. Would you like to give us a brief discussion on where we're at and what's going on, please?
Sure. We just created a schematic design of what the concession stand and scoring building could look like to drum up interest for fundraising purposes and just get the community excited about what's going on.
All right, sorry, Blake. I got a phone call in the middle of that, so you can share your screen now.
Okay.
And I turned my phone off.
It says I can't until you're done sharing.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. All right. Can everybody see the screen? At least can you see it?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So just a quick overview. This was the site plan done by Rettler Corporation. This is the whole site. Where the star is the concession stand that we're going to be talking about tonight. So this gives you a little context of where this is situated. And just a little bit closer overview of the 4 fields. Quick floor plan, first floor, about 1,200 square feet. Male and female bathroom facilities, about 7 fixtures in each. With drinking fountains. There's a shutter that can control all the plumbing, so this whole building can get shut down in one location. Nice concession stand area, some storage, and internal stairs up to the scoring and umpire changing room areas. On the second floor, we have the scoring areas looking out to each of the fields, a umpire dressing area where they can get away from parents and things like that, and get changed and use the facilities in private. And that's about 668 square feet. Some of the inspiration images came from the community. Tin Man was one of our big inspirational items, old farmsteads, agricultural buildings, things like that. This is what I'm calling a collage. So I'm putting this all together, and this is going to morph into how we envision the building. And so this is what we're thinking. So we're taking a lot of the cues from the community. Again, the Tin Man is what you're seeing up on the top. The structures, the scoring are some of the farmhouse images. Then you notice the columns down below take their cues from the Tin Man. This is a view down the alleyway. We got the dugouts on each side. We're taking some of the color from the main concession stand and just kind of bringing that through. Lots of activity space for families while they're watching their games. All the pavers will be able to be used for sponsorship, so we can help in the fundraising activities. This is our closer view of the concession ordering stand. They are standing 6 feet apart, if you notice. This is a view from the other side. This would be the entrance to the restrooms. You'll see that one entry point, so it can all be controlled and shut down really easily. This is a view from what will be the Veterans Memorial area. That'll still be designed, but I just wanted to show what it would look like with maybe some seating areas and just the kind of the context of where that'd be situated. And this is just an aerial view. Stands might get a little bit bigger or smaller depending on some of the further conversations. But you will notice a nice big 6-foot overhang over the whole thing. So we can have seating, picnic tables for families to get out of the sun. So there you go. That's kind of just a brief overview of what we're thinking. I know you guys have a lot to talk about, so I want to keep it kind of short and sweet. But that's our idea for what it could look like. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Blake. And sorry, I was a little distracted when you got started, but just wanted to preface this for the board and planning commission and members of the public, just to let you know, Supreme Structures, Dan Bertler and Blake Hubert and their team have offered to do some conceptual design services pro bono to just help move the design for JC Park a little bit forward, and potentially use this if the planning commission and board likes the direction this is going, as some ways to drum up support and interest in fundraising from contractors and other community members. So this was at no cost to the village, but something that they offered to do. We really appreciate Blake's creativity on this project, and would love to hear any brief comments or feedback that anyone has on the initial concept design.
I also want to add that there is a memo in your packet for the Plan Commission members, and I'm assuming for the village board members, that sort of describe where they're at on the project and where they're at in the process as well, to also kind of cue off of what Elise had mentioned and what Blake had sort of presented. My comments and thoughts are, I like it. I like how you tried to earth it in things that are Oregon, and bring some of that to life through this structure. I think aesthetically it's attractive. I like the colors, again, incorporating some of the things that are Oregon. It certainly meets the needs of the space and that location. And it's something that's iconic. And so I appreciate and like the direction that it is going. Yes.
Great.
Does anybody else on the Planning Commission have any other comments that they'd like to put forth, or on the village board?
This is Mark, and I was just going to reiterate how I think it's very visually appealing. And I was going to ask also, the pavers, would they be like a water permeable type of surface that would not have so much runoff?
We haven't quite gotten that far down the design, but that'll definitely be something we look at in the overall
Right.
stormwater management for the site. But that's a great idea to look into the ability to do that potentially
I
here.
think the only comment I'm going to make on that is the permeable pavers are basically a concrete that's got, well, it's pervious. It has holes in it, essentially, simply. And they fill up because of what we use here in the Midwest with sand and with salt over time. So the process to clean them out is to either grind the top off or to replace them. So if they're going to be something that's sponsored, you really don't want to grind off the top face of something that somebody has just paid to put in there. But maybe what we could do is disperse some of those pavers. And I don't think that we would be seeing a lot of salt or sand. And I think it's a nice idea to try to get some of that benefit going.
This is Patrick. I would echo the same concern. I like the design. I like the fact that you've taken some Oregon motif and integrated it into it. But I just looked at it and I saw a lot of hard surfaces. And so I'm a little concerned about runoff. So I don't know if pervious concrete is the answer, as John pointed out, some of the issues, but maybe there's a way to channel water, or I just think we need to be very conscientious about where water is going to go and integrating that into the landscape.
And just to clarify too, we'll still be working with Rutler, hopefully, on the whole park design. So be something depending on who the architect and contractor is that takes this concession building to construction. They would be working together to look at the whole site and how water is managed throughout the whole site. So
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, ready.
Anybody else have any comments on the presentation?
I like the overall concept a lot. It's very unique. It's very Oregon. I also really like and appreciate the wide overhangs. I think refuge from the sun, and on a day like today, if there's a tournament or whatever, refuge from the sudden rains and stuff, giving people an area to duck into is really, really nice feature to have on there. So I definitely think it's on the right track.
Well said. So I think, Blake, you've kind of got some good feedback and some positive feedback in a direction to sort of continue taking the project.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Blake.
Elise, I'll turn the screen back over to you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, it looks like we may have a couple of the village board members back with us now that are able to be with us from their other meetings. And we are moving on to item 8, public hearing. And item A is the verification of proper legal notice. Elise, you want to kind of walk us through exactly what this is, please?
Sure. So this is the first element here of the comprehensive plan amendment, but this is just to show for the record that we did follow the public hearing guidelines and had this posted, I believe, a month ahead of time for posting of these comprehensive plan amendments in the newspaper, and then also the neighbors that were within the radius of
I love you.
of the.
No, that's fine. It's good.
Could everybody mute themselves if they're not speaking right now? That'd be great. So neighbors were notified. This was sent in the mail to neighbors. So this is just for the record to show this was what was mailed out and posted in the newspaper.
Perfect. All right, so that is the legal mumbo jumbo. And now we move on to item B, which is the presentation of the proposed comprehensive plan amendments by the village planning consultant and the village staff. So I guess what I'd like to do at this time is sort of get a lay of the land about what we're going to try to get through this evening. And please remember that we're doing this via Zoom and we're not all familiar with the buttons that we may need to push or may not need to push. So bear with us as we sort of work through this process. But at this time, I guess what I'd like to do is ask Elise to describe what's going on, the process, and the covenants that we're sort of taking care of.
Sounds good. We're going to tag team with Mike Slavny, Matt Dregney, and some of the village staff here as well. But just as an overview, tonight we are reviewing 6 potential comprehensive plan amendments. Our comprehensive plan was, I believe, last adopted as a full document in 2013. So we are coming up on a full kind of overhaul and update in 2023. But in the meantime, we had developers approach us about potential changes on amendments 1 through 4 that you see there. Amendment 5 we'll get to, but that's just updating kind of what the current land use is. It was potentially planned as 2-family, but single family was what was built there. So we wanted to just have that match the existing development. And then the last is matching now the Anderson County Park that Dane County owns, changing some of that land from agriculture over to park and open space. But just as a general overview tonight, we'll be reviewing each of these amendments one by one, and then after the public hearing, the Planning Commission will vote on each individual amendment, so they can be done in pieces. Not all have to be approved. It's not all or nothing, but they can be reviewed one at a time. There's no ability to change what the proposed designation is, so it's either recommending approval of what's being proposed, or if it's not recommended for approval, it would just remain at its current point. But we will, when we do get to the public hearing, just ask that any members of the public, if you can put your name in the chat box and just let us know that you'd like to speak, we'll call you in order of who put their name in the box first. So after tonight's review and vote, we'll go to the village board meeting on October 19th. That date moved from their meeting on the 5th to the meeting on the 19th. So that would be the final adoption of any recommendations that the Planning Commission moves forward. The village board gets a chance to review that as well. And then if they recommend approval, that's when the comprehensive plan would be updated. Neighbors would be notified, and we'll publish a new map. But also, just as an overview, I want to remind people tonight we should be thinking about kind of a high level of review. We're looking at potential future land uses. We don't have any specific developments in front of us. So things, questions with regards to building materials or setbacks, lighting, parking lots, things like that. Those would all be reviewed after this step when we actually have a developer come forward with a building plan. So just want to keep that in perspective. We should be kind of thinking about the broader land use categories for these lots. So the next document here is just an overview of where these proposed amendments are. So 1 is the Lakestone Properties parcel, 2 is Habitat. These 3 are within Oregon Parks neighborhood, and then 6 is the addition of the Anderson Farm County Park land. So just an overview of the timeline so far, we had a number of outdoor neighborhood meetings in July and August with the neighbors about these projects. We've had a couple meetings so far. In August, the Planning Commission adopted their public participation plan. Tonight will be the joint public hearing, and then October 19th will be the village board adoption meeting. I went over that before. This is and what is proposed. So we'll kind of go one by one, and then I'll ask Mike Slavny to just provide a little bit of background about what the previous designation was and sort of the history behind that parcel and why perhaps they should be changed. But the first one is 917, 919, 947, and also 957 Janesville Street. There's a duplex in this property, but this is the Lakestone properties proposed land, and they are looking to do potentially multi-family buildings here and a commercial use on the front. So this would be changing from a planned business, planned office and neighborhood office current designation to mixed residential, and then carving out about 2 acres of this total about 12-acre site for a planned business sort of highway commercial type use. Anything you'd like to add here, Mike?
Well, in 2013, when we did the comprehensive plan, and in 2003 and 4, when we did the first version of the plan, we were hoping that this would turn into a small office park. It's close to the interchange and at the traffic signal, which provides really good access. But that hasn't happened. And many of us are concerned now with the viability of planning for office parks. We don't know what will happen post-COVID, but we may have a glut of office space and commercial space as a result of many people working from home and liking it. So we've been thinking about how we should designate this when we do the next 10-year update. And multifamily seemed like a possibility. We've got a large wetland on the north end of this property, and there's multifamily development in general surrounding the property, except there on the southeast, where we have some office development. And this year we received a request from people who have secured this property to redesignate this for multifamily development, which on this map is brown and matches a lot of the uses around it. And then in the southeast corner of this property, they would like to designate planned business development, which means, high quality materials and architecture and good amount of landscaping and calm lighting, but it could be a building of more than 5,000 square feet, which is the threshold between neighborhood business and planned business. And the size of the property that they're indicating there would support a building of more than 5,000 square feet and still meet the parking and green space requirements. So that is our first item for consideration tonight.
Thanks, Mike. The next potential amendment is, it's actually 769 Janesville Street. That's a typo there, but this is the site that Habitat for Humanity has been looking at for a small development of their housing model built on here. This is currently shown in our comp plan as single family. That's shown here in the yellow, and with the multifamily again being the darker brown. And they are proposing to change that designation to 2-family and would have a small number of duplexes potentially on this parcel. We believe this is a a good transition between the single family homes on Janesville Street and multifamily homes. This is the Woodland Village Apartments right next door. Here's Perry Parkway. This is Janesville Street and the Wisco Industries site right across the street.
And when we did the comprehensive plan, if there was development on a parcel and the development was being used, we almost always reflected the existing land use in the comprehensive plan. This is a large parcel for one single family house, and you can compare it to the lot sizes to the northwest. We note that on the north side of this property, there are duplexes, and those represent a transition between the single family along Janesville and the multifamily to the north. And this request, matches that pattern. It's a very large parcel for, compared to one home. And that's our second request this evening.
This is about a 1.3 acre site on Janesville Street. All right, the next three are 250 and 200 North Bergamot Boulevard and 1002 Oregon Parks Avenue. So that's shown here within this purple box. This is currently designated as central mixed use. Mike will talk a little bit about this, but this was originally envisioned to be sort of a neighborhood center. And since the time that this neighborhood has been platted and developed, these parcels have been not as desirable for commercial development, just given their lack of visibility from Highway CC, and the market hasn't supported commercial development in a neighborhood setting in this area yet. So the developers approached us and asked if they could change the designation from this central mixed use, which allows a mix of commercial and residential uses, to solely residential. And on these lots, this is just north of Beehive right here, and then this is sort of the island of land between Park, Beehive, and behind Omni there, to be two family with duplexes on these lots.
At the intersection of Bergamot and Jefferson, we've been envisioning a neighborhood center being developed going back to the year 2000. And contemporary with that thinking, Sequoia Commons was developed on the west side of Madison, and Middleton Hills was developed in Middleton. And that project in particular has a very comparable kind of location on Century Boulevard. And on the east side of Madison, Grandview Commons was developed on Cottage Grove Road, which, also is a county highway. And we thought it could work here. Later, the developers of Oregon Parks came in, and we talked to them about this concept, and they were agreeable to designate parts of the southern end of their property in the central mixed use category, which would allow 3-story buildings right up to the sidewalks, really a kind of a little downtown feel.
Don't have it memorized.
Meant to be a very walkable community. And along Jefferson, we were allowing more car-oriented developments. So this was supposed to be the center of a walkable neighborhood. The intensity of development in the central mixed use is very high. We can get floor area ratios, which is the comparison of the floor area of buildings to the lot area, of up to 3.0. So, intensive property line to property line development. And typically you would have multifamily on upper floors, sometimes offices, and either offices, services, or retail on a ground floor. Well, the market for that has not panned out, and the property owners have asked to change all of the areas that are zoned or designated for central mixed use In this area, straddling Bergamot Boulevard, the request is for two-family development, which would be a great reduction in density and provide a nice transition from the more intensive uses facing Jefferson to the single-family parts of the neighborhood.
Oh, I'm muted. All right. The next request is just down the street. This is 200 Liberty Park Drive and 931 Oregon Center Drive. These parcels are located right behind Mulligan's and the Journey Above daycare that's being constructed right now. Again, currently they are shown in the comp plan as central mixed use, and the proposed designation would be a mixed residential, which Mike can speak towards, but this would allow any number of potential multifamily developments, from townhomes to perhaps a small apartment building. One thing to note on these parcels, prior to our current zoning code getting adopted in 2006, there was actually a plan that was put forward by the developers that still own this parcel to do a 3-story mixed commercial and residential building with retail spaces on the lower floor and then 2 floors of residential above. And because that was approved prior to the current zoning code, that plan is actually still active. So even if this comprehensive plan amendment wouldn't go forward, the developer could still potentially put forward that plan and build that building that would have retail on bottom and the residential above, just given the central mixed use downtown type development that was originally envisioned here.
Right, and the only thing I can really add to that, Elise, is, the village cannot control tenure. We cannot, using our zoning authority, limit what is owner occupied or what is rented. Most of the single family homes in the village can be rented out. So, we were hoping to get condo development here. And again, Sequoia Commons is a really good example of that over the library on Midvale Boulevard at Tokay. And again, in other parts of Dane County, getting viable non-residential uses on the ground floor has sometimes been easy, and in other locations has been difficult. There is approved zoning, planned development zoning for this property that would allow that original proposal to still go forward regardless of the comp plan. But to broaden the market possibilities, the property owners are requesting the ability to do straight multifamily development on this property, and that's our 4th request.
And Matt Drigne's our village attorney. This might be a good time to Matt to clarify some of the questions that were brought up about the covenants and deed restrictions in this neighborhood.
Sure. Hi. I have taken a look at the covenants. I think the key points that I would make are that they are essentially private land use restrictions. The village has no role with respect to either the creation or the enforcement of those covenants. And so in my view, although there's something that they may be important to the property owners, they really should not play a role in the Plan Commission's decision about what the appropriate action would be for the village to take in its comprehensive planning decision. And so that's my perspective on the covenants.
Okay, thanks, Matt. I do have those pulled up, and if there are specific questions about that, we can address them as they come up.
Okay.
The 5th request is in this purple box here, 307, 301, and 300 North Bergamot Boulevard and 301 Liberty Park Drive. These are currently built as single-family homes. They were originally designated as two-family residential, which allows both single and two-family development. They ended up getting built as single-family homes, so this is not something that was requested by the residents, but doesn't change any ability for them to use their property. This is just simply matching the existing development on the property and having our comp plan reflect what's actually built on the ground.
I agree with everything you said, Elise.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add to that.
That one's fairly simple. And then our last one here is the Anderson Farm County Park. The parcels that are outlined in red there were shown as agriculture and rural. When the comp plan was adopted, those were just pieces of farmland. But in the meantime, the county has been able to acquire those parcels for the county park. And again, just like with amendment number 6 or number 5, we would just like to match what is currently on the ground and the planned use for those parcels. And now that the county has ownership of them in the park system, we believe these will continue to be park uses moving forward.
And the county has a master plan for Anderson County Park, and it includes more parcels than we're showing here in green, but they have not been acquired yet. And we're always hesitant to designate property that has not been acquired for park and open space purposes. So we're kind of taking a conservative approach here and chasing the acquisition of property before we designate it for park use. And at the same time, this is a large piece of property, and some of it will be pretty intensively developed with parking lots and a ball field. And we thought now that it's going forward for sure, it was time to amend our comp plan to designate its current configuration.
All right, so our next steps would be, John, I'll hand it back over to you to open the public hearing, hear the public comment, close the public hearing, and then we'll have response to the comments by both the staff and consultant, and then open it up for discussion with the Planning Commission and the Village Board. So I'll move back to the agenda here.
Thanks, Elise and Mike, for that presentation about the topics that we're going through tonight on this public hearing. So moving on with the agenda, I will open the joint public hearing for the proposed comprehensive plan amendments with the joint meeting of the Plan Commission and the Village Board. And then I would also like to acknowledge that as part of that public hearing, in your packets that you received and information that you received via email over the last couple of days in emails from Elise, are several emails, letters, notes, or memos from interested parties on all of these items that we're talking about this evening. And I hope that you have had a chance to read through those and to get a list of questions that you might have. And I think that I'd also like to put a thank you out to members of the village who took the time to have their voice heard. That's what this is all about. So that is item 2. And then item 3, statements and questions from the public. But at this time, what we'd like to do is we now have the public hearing open, and this is the opportunity that we have for people to speak. And what I'm going to ask is that you try to keep your presentation or your comments to less than 3 minutes if you have. And if you are going to say something that somebody has already said, to be respectful for everybody else, say that I agree with what has been said, or that maybe you could go together with somebody, or you could speak as a group, so that we could try to not gloss over hearing your opinion, but know that you have been heard, but that is just not being said again and again and again. So With that being said, I guess what I'd like to do, Elise, is to have either you or Joy sort of give us, we're going to take these items one by one and have you sort of tell us where people are in the role.
Okay. So just as a reminder, if you would like to speak, if you could enter your name in the chat box, and then I will put you on the list to speak. But I have first to speak Jesse Cook, and then on deck would be Edie Martanofi. You'll be next.
And if I could add, we'll need speakers to identify themselves and provide their address because this is a public hearing format.
Yes, thanks, Mike.
And if you could also tell us what topic you will be talking on, please.
Hi. I don't see myself on my screen, so I just don't know. Can you guys see and hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Jesse Cook. I would like to speak on the Oregon Parks rezoning, item number 4.
It's not a rezoning. It's a comp plan amendment.
Okay. All right. All right. I live at 388 Liberty Park Drive. I have lived in Oregon with my husband, Corey, since 2003. We moved to our current house in 2012. Part of the reason we picked the Oregon Parks neighborhood was for its secluded, quiet feel with a limited number of lots where you would get to know almost all of your neighbors. Over the last 8 years, this has changed dramatically with the number of new homes, duplexes, and apartment buildings that now surround all of our single-family homes. Although I'm not opposed to new development, I have major concerns and am strongly opposed to the rezoning of lots 58 and 59.
It's not being rezoned.
Okay,
well, it's being changed.
The land use is proposing to be changed from
in
what?
The comprehensive plan. I just want to make sure that we create a clear record.
Okay. With the current growth, okay. I'm very unhappy with the major increase in traffic that we have seen through our neighborhood and the quality of the maintenance of some of these newer buildings on their properties, namely the All-Star properties that line Peace Lane, Oregon Parks, and Alpine Avenue. The traffic increase is a huge safety risk for the numerous kids who bike, scooter, walk around the neighborhood, and play at the park. I fear over time, our property values will diminish if we continue to have our single-family homes surrounded by multi-family units. For these reasons, and those mentioned by my husband, Corey Cook, in his email, I ask that you reconsider moving this to multi-family. Something that I would like to add is that someone recently asked me where I thought such a development like this belonged. Multi-family development like this to me belongs in a downtown area with many access to village amenities that are within walking distance. I see one of the public appearances later will be in regards to a concept at Netherwood, North Main and Soden. That site is a 4-acre site with a proportion of proposed retail. It is within walking distance of the high school, 2 elementary schools, a health clinic, a drugstore, a grocery store, convenience stores, restaurants, churches, and downtown. This property is much more suitable for large multifamily as opposed to our neighborhood. I, along with many of the other neighbors, have spoke over the last month regarding this issue, are extremely disappointed to allow all this growth to continue in the village without the support of proper infrastructure. I'm very disappointed that the developer is even entertaining this idea, given that it is not legal, given those covenants that we were all given when we purchased our home. I ask that you please take into account the numerous emails you have received opposing this change. Just because the developer cannot sell the lots the way they are zoned does not make it okay to change them so he can sell them to get his money out of it. Ultimately, Oregon Parks LLC is not the ones who live with the consequences of your decision. It is us homeowners who see their home values depreciate or now have to worry about the safety of our kids in the neighborhood. It is us homeowners whose once peaceful park is now going to be possibly surrounded by large apartment buildings and parked cars lining the streets. We all know that renters do not have the same motivation as homeowners to maintain public spaces because they come and go. Please do what is right. Take a vote of the homeowners who live here to decide what should happen to these 2 lots. Thank you.
All right, Elise, who would be next?
So LD is next, and then Joel Olson, you are on deck.
Hi, my name is Ildi Martanfi. I'm at 562 Concord Drive here in Oregon. And I am speaking in favor of multifamily housing overall, and including the Amendment 4 area. I know we all care about our community and we all care about each other. I know many of you believe that affordable housing and multifamily housing does have its place in our town. And we now have the opportunity to turn pro-housing attitudes into pro-housing action. The great news is that doing so will actually strengthen our community and may actually increase our property values. There's data from a white paper from the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University that concludes working communities with multifamily dwellings actually have higher property values than other working communities. The average value of owner-occupied houses was highest in working communities with the most multifamily units. And this is from nationwide data. A study closer to home showed that properties in Madison, Wisconsin near Section 42 developments appreciated more rapidly than other properties. I was excited to hear this and learn this because it's good for all of us. I am also excited to know some of the facts around community involvement. So one of the things I really love about our town, one of the top reasons we enjoy living here, is how engaged and involved our community members are. So I was excited to learn that these studies show that apartment residents are just as likely as homeowners to socialize with their neighbors and become involved in sports teams, clubs, and other social groups. I'm also happy to know that higher housing density and multifamily developments are not associated with higher crime rates. Added to all of this, apartment residents actually pay more in taxes and have fewer school-age children on average than people in single-family homes. So supporting multifamily units actually helps our schools out too. I like facts and data, so all of that is really reassuring to me. I'll also share that I live near several duplexes and apartment complexes and have really enjoyed getting to know neighbors I would not otherwise get to know, because our neighborhood is just a really popular one for folks to go on walks through, and we get to meet people that way. So for all these reasons, I really support bringing more multifamily housing options to Oregon. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Elise, next. Elise? Joy, anyone? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's Mark.
If I had music, I'd play it.
I can step in for Elise. It should be Joel Olson is next, and I have Linda Fisher on deck.
Okay, thank you. Is Joel available? Joel, you need to turn your microphone on. It's in the bottom left corner. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. My name is Joel Olson. I live at 833 Oregon Parks Avenue in an owner-occupied duplex. I wrote to the commission earlier regarding my concerns for high-density development along Oregon Center Drive and the increased traffic in that area. That street seems to be awkwardly designed. There's not an east end exit, which would require all traffic to be exiting to the west and to the north. You already have my letter in your packet. So I'm encouraging the commission to retain the comprehensive plan as is designated now for especially lots 58 and 59 on Oregon Center Drive. I understand there hasn't been the anticipated business development in the area, but I would encourage a little more aggressive effort to that effect. For example, and I have 3 of them, subsequent to the open meeting in Liberty Park on August 12th, an article appeared in the Oregon Observer announcing that a new senior assisted facility might find its way to Oregon. Properties on Cassandra Way were under consideration. Within a week or so, the developers withdrew their proposal for that project, and yet it seems that kind of facility would be ideal and well-suited, lower impact, lower density area for Oregon Center Drive. Or a senior housing project like is soon to be considered for the areas between North Main and Soden Drive on Netherwood. A third example is a A recent Oregon Observer told that Village Hall might be conceivably relocated to Alpine Parkway because the village is growing to the west. That suggests to me that professional office facilities or other commercial properties in the area then would be highly desirable. And these properties under consideration this evening should be looked at with a creative eye for that kind of a development. So I'm encouraging tonight the commission to retain the actual designation in the comprehensive plan for lots 58 and 59 along Oregon Center Drive. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is Linda Fisher next? Is that correct?
Yes, Linda Fisher, and then I have Dawn Knight.
Okay.
After on deck.
All right. Thank you. Linda.
Yes, thank you. I'm Linda Fisher, Property Supervisor for Pine Cove Apartments on Park Street. I represent the owners of Pine Cove Apartments and Galena Management, Inc. Unfortunately, Mr. Galena is not able to be on the call tonight. My notes are in reference to the Lakestone property being proposed to be built right to the west of Pine Cove Apartments. In the packet tonight is a letter and some diagrams from Mr. Galena, which clarifies our position. We do not oppose Lakestone Properties' proposed development of the apartment project. However, we feel strongly that the buildings should be limited to 2 stories rather than 3 stories due to invasion of privacy. Please see the second diagram after our letter. It would be similar to building a 3-story house next to a single-family home. Another item of concern is the close proximity of Building 3 to our building at 922 Park Street. Please see the 4th diagram after the letter. There are only 60 feet between the 2 buildings, building number 3 and our building there at 922 Park Street, which removes privacy from both buildings. We would also hope that the C-store being considered, that it would be reconsidered for a business that has a lower volume of traffic. This development is residential, and a C-store type of business would create extra traffic and potential noise pollution. In conclusion, we support this development, but we're concerned about the 3 items mentioned: the buildings being 3 stories tall, 1 building being too close to ours, and the potential traffic and volume of a C-store business. Thank you for your time this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Next up would be Dawn Knight.
Yeah. And Elise, are you back with us? Okay. After Dawn will be Corey Cook.
Dawn, are you with us?
Yes, I am. And so this is Dawn Knight, 848 Peace Lane is where I live. I'm going to take your advice, and to save time, I would like to say that I concur with what Joel Olson said. He has most of my concerns covered, especially the traffic and the, especially the traffic, the green space, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Next up would be Corey Cook. And then
Maria Debek, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Okay, thank you. Corey?
All right, hi, Corey Cook here from 388 Liberty Park Drive. I think most of my concerns are summed up in the emails that I sent and what the rest of the community sent. I'm speaking because I am opposed to the new comprehensive plan at lots 58 and 59 in Oregon Parks. Regardless of all of my concerns that laid out in those emails and everything, the one that supersedes them all is simple and cannot be refuted. It is in regards to the legality of the issue. As my email stated, Oregon Parks neighborhood is subject to the declaration of covenants and restrictions set within. This does include All-Star Properties and Oregon Parks as a developer, who actually wrote the covenants and filed them with Dane County. So I presume you guys have all had a chance to look at those and understand what the issues are. And even though the village may not be legally held to them and have to follow them, I think what you're doing is if you go ahead and approve this, you'll be sending a message that sets a precedent. You know, and nowhere in there does it say that those lots are to be used for mixed residential. It's all supposed to be inclusive for retail or office and commercial purposes. As you know, it's legal and binding, and as you know, it's legal and binding enforceable document. The developer cannot legally build what he is proposing. It seems a waste of time and energy to consider rezoning until the covenant is in alignment with what is being proposed. I respectfully ask that you require the developer to come back with an amendment to the covenants of 2/3 of the property owners as required by section 17 of the documents. You know, in preparation of writing the statement tonight, I watched the June 4th meeting too. And nowhere did anybody give any other reason other than this land has been sitting for too long. And I concur with what Joel had said earlier, that I think some more effort needs to be put into finding other development purposes as the land is supposed to be used for. So, and I guess I'm just kind of upset and discouraged at how the village seems to be downplaying the. So.
Sorry, Corey, I lost that last part of you. I had some feedback on my end, so I don't know if everybody else did or not, but could you please repeat the last sort of couple of sentences that you had? I apologize.
Well, I'm kind of upset with the way it seems that things are being downplayed tonight. This has been proposed several times and equal to Jefferson Crossings downtown. And now there seems to be some retraction on those statements. And, you know, I don't know why that is, but it's always been proposed that we've heard to be large apartment complex. I guess for those out there who feel that they're in support of this because it will create affordable housing for others who may not have otherwise been able to live in Oregon, it has been stated in previous meetings that this is not affordable housing, that this is at market. So this, you know, that doesn't necessarily help the cause there for our affordable housing. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe the next person up is Maria Debek, and I apologize if I'm not saying your name correctly.
And Ashley Disroot, if I got that name right, is on deck.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's Maria Debek, and I am at 933 Halcyon Days Court. And I am speaking in relation to number 4, and to do what you have asked in terms of trying to shorten the time span and not repeat things. I am in support of what Jesse and Corey Cook, sorry Jesse and Corey Cook and Joel Olson have just gone over. I will not reiterate their points, but I support those points and share those same concerns. One other concern that I have with past board decisions is that board members have put through and signed their names to approve proposals in the past and haven't been exactly clear on how that proposal was actually going to play out, even though it was clearly stated. I know you have a lot of things to read through, and the fine print probably doesn't always get read. And the example that I have of this was at a board meeting that I spoke at. I've actually spoken at several, but 1-2 years ago, and I won't go over the whole situation, but just to give an example of my concern, the board approved the proposal to have the Cassander Way area put in where the woods were basically, most of them cleared out. And one of the board members at the initial meeting had said no one would buy a wooded lot and then cut all the trees down. A year and a half later, I'm at a board meeting as I watched the trees be cut down on these lots, and I brought that up at the meeting. stating, the board members had said at this earlier meeting, no one's going to buy a wooded lot and cut all the trees down. That's exactly what happened. So I had concerns about the board pushing things through without really fully understanding what it's going to mean. And like I said, I do support the points that were brought up by Corey Cook, Jesse Cook, Joel Olson. I also had sent a letter in with my concerns also. That's all I have.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It looks like Ashley, and I'm just going to say her first name because I already have one name missaid, last name mispronounced. It looks like Ashley's having some trouble logging back in. So why don't we go to the next person, which I think is Corey? Oh, looks like Corey, you've already, yeah, Corey.
Ashley is the bottom of our list right now, but I mean, if there is anyone that would want to, speak, John, I think, you could have them unmute and speak, I would think. But that's all we have entered in for names, and we're trying to get Ashley back.
Okay.
So, Hildy, if you're talking to her, please have her.
I'm here.
Back in. Ashley's in.
Ashley, are you?
Yes. Sorry about that. What happened?
Okay. Ashley, you're up.
I am. Thank you very much. I am I have the same things to say as Ildi. Actually, I am in support of the amendment. And my only addition would be, as our village development extends in all directions, it's important to take in all things into consideration beyond just the families that are living in the specific areas now, because the development will continue far beyond the generation that's here. Our community is growing and actively working to create a safe place for everybody as well. We've already, based on some of the letters that have been sent in, some of the emails, we are already creating a community that is divisive with different sides of town. And I would encourage the Planning Commission as well as the board to look at different studies that have been done in other areas on mid-sized cities that are growing, and look at their housing inequities as a result of what you're considering right now. A lot of the inequities are found to be through zoning and land use ordinances. And we can use the information from these other communities that have already been through this process to ensure that we do not fall into the same patterns. And with the rapidly growing Oregon, if it's to be an equitable community, we need to be making decisions that will allow for that to happen. And this includes housing options and locations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. As Jeff mentioned, hello? Sorry.
They were asking for my address.
Oh, okay.
It is 142 Thompson Lane in Oregon.
Thank you. Well, it seems like we have gone through everybody that has been on the chat list. Is there anybody in the audience that has not signed up in the chat room that would like to take this opportunity to speak on any of these issues? You have the opportunity to unmute now and say your piece. I do not see anybody else coming up. So at this time, I would then ask if the Plan Commission or anybody on the village board has any questions of any of the people that have spoken to us this evening. Do anybody on the Plan Commission or village board? No comment?
John, this is Patrick. I have a question. Ms. Fisher talked about, or was in support, indicated support for the development at 917 Janesville Street with the request that it be 2 stories or less. What we're voting on tonight will not dictate the height of the building, is my understanding. And if I could just, Mike Slavny, if you could clarify that.
That's correct. Tonight, we're really only talking about those broad general land use categories. And for, any project to go forward, zoning has to be secured. And it's the zoning that sets the height limitations for the property, not the comprehensive plan.
I understand. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you, Patrick.
I've got a request probably from Mike Slavny as well. The Oregon Parks Parcels, a lot of the comments that I received in the packet, it seemed a good share of the people were thinking maybe that those lots weren't already designated for a good number of rental or condo type units. And I'm just wondering if Mike could speak a little bit under the current land use designation of the central mixed use, what potentially all along could have been built on those parcels.
Right. So I'm gonna step back a little bit and provide some history. Before Oregon Parks was annexed, the village designated that area in its plan for a planned neighborhood. And Elise, I'd like you to show the overall village plan if you could. So these yellow speckled areas that are around the outside of most of the village are that planned neighborhood category. That was on the land that became Oregon Parks, on the land that became Alpine Meadows and Bergamot, and also on the land for the new Highlands of Netherwood project. And in the lower right-hand part of our plan, in the legend, there is a little pie right at Elise's arrow there. And it indicates that within each of those planned neighborhood areas, we want single family residential development, which is yellow, the beige 2-family development, the brown multifamily development. We're open to institutional development like religious institutions or schools. We want a little bit of neighborhood commercial development. And, we're looking to disperse all of those kinds of uses around the village. And one of our members of the public commented on that, and that's a way to make a more sustainable and equitable community. And that's exactly right. Problems and concerns related to traffic and crime and housing inflation or deflation all tend to arise where uses are highly segregated, which means over-concentrations of some uses in some area. Oregon Parks, Alpine Meadows, and the Bergamot all came in roughly at the same time. And we saw a unique opportunity to create a real neighborhood center for the west side of the village, the downtown serving the area to the east of the railroad tracks. And as the village grows, we thought this would be a good location for a more dense neighborhood center there. So again, our downtown zoning district, which would be enabled by the current comprehensive plan designation, is the most intensive zoning district we have. We allow full coverage of the lot by buildings. We allow 3 to 4 story development depending on the heights of the floors. That zoning district allows for non-residential uses as well as residential uses. And non-residential uses such as retail or office tend to be higher traffic generators than residential units of the same size. But this was laid out before anything was annexed, platted, or zoned, or developed. So the plan for this high-intensity neighborhood center was before any single lot on the west side of the community, the new west side, in Alpine Meadows, Bergamot, Oregon Parks, or Highland of Netherwood, was created following the adoption of the plan that called for the dense neighborhood center at this location. If the plan request to amend the plan for mixed residential, multifamily residential would be approved, the intensity of development would likely be less than if the central mixed use category goes away. And, correlated with that, the amount of traffic would probably be less. So to some respect, the request before the Plan Commission reduces the maximum potential amount of traffic that could occur compared to the current land use plan designation. The comp plan doesn't compel everybody to fill the entire lot or build to the maximum, but the maximums under the current designation that are possible are substantially higher than what's being requested. Did that answer your question, Scott?
Yes, yeah. And, just the fact that multifamily has always been envisioned there in a little bit different format under the current classification.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
Mike, this is Patrick. I hate to put you on the spot on this, but comparing the idea of mixed commercial with the potential residential for this area versus all residential, what are we looking at unit-wise on those lots?
Right. So I would estimate that 25% more floor area could be developed under the current comp plan designation. Now, if we had a 4-story development and the first floor was non-residential, office, commercial, service, daycare, it's a wash in terms of the number of units, but then we'd have the traffic and activities also associated with a floor or a partial floor of non-residential. The current designation is the highest density designation we have in the comprehensive plan. And we could get more units because there are no setbacks. Whereas the multifamily designation would typically require setbacks on all sides of the building.
Anybody else have asked questions of any of the people that have spoken here?
There's some questions, John, that says, is there data to support the reduced traffic, and the traffic times may be different, from Corey Cook and Don Knight, and it looks like Maria might want to speak again.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit of data out there about traffic generation. Most of it is compiled by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, ITE, and they do actual traffic count studies all over the country. And for example, we know the typical single family home generates about 12 trips a day, and a trip is leaving the house and another trip is returning to the house. So six round trips. Whereas duplexes average about 10 trips a day, and small scale apartments average about 8 trips a day. Larger scale multifamily comes in at about 7 trips a day. We also know that non-residential uses vary much more widely. Retail has a lot of fast in and outs, so more trips, whereas office, except possibly for leaving for lunch, every office worker arrives in the morning and returns in the evening. So, if it's a gym, a lot of turnover. If it's a daycare, 2 high peaks in the morning and the evening, but not much going on during the middle of the day. So there's a lot more variability with non-residential uses. But given that the uses now sought after in the comprehensive plan include retail and personal service uses, not only does the building cover a lot more of the lot potentially, but we could have some high traffic creating uses on the ground floor under the current comp plan designation.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We've got a couple of people that would like to speak again. I do not want this to turn into a debate. This is a public format. I like to keep it civil. So I guess, Maria, with that in mind, please feel free to say what you'd like to say.
Yep, I will keep this simple. A couple of comments and a question. If this was already slotted from a number of years ago, which is what has been stated, and doesn't have to be answered right this second, but why is it being brought up at this point? If it's already, sounds like it's been approved a number of years ago, that would be one of my questions. My other just kind of basic thought is in your talk about traffic, 12 trips per family, 10 if you're in a duplex, 8 if you're in an apartment. Clearly it's just kind of common sense. If you're in an apartment, if you're talking about an apartment complex, the traffic is going to go up exponentially in this area and would change the feel, not just the traffic, but would change the feel of our neighborhood immensely. So that's just kind of a basic approach. You have a lot more people living here, you're going to have a lot more traffic. And the intersections at Alpine and CC and North Bergamot and CC already at different points of the day can be pretty dangerous. I've seen accidents at both of them. And I guess my concern just as a community member is when do we get a say as to what happens where we live? I mean, we choose this place to live for a reason and want to maintain how it feels, how it is for our families. And this changes things significantly. And just a little comment too about the over-concentration area that Mike had mentioned. Oregon is small enough that we don't really have that issue of too many things being concentrated in one area. It's a pretty small community. It's not a Madison or anything like that. So I don't see that as a concern. And if the big concern in Oregon is that there's not affordable housing, and I do a lot of volunteer work for this community, this is not a way to solve that problem. Putting up an expensive apartment complex that people will not be able to afford again. So it doesn't seem to be solving some of the concerns that are in Dane County and in our community. That's all I have to say.
I could answer Maria's questions that she asked. The first was, how do these proposed changes to the comprehensive plan actually come forward and why now? State law requires the comprehensive plan to be updated only every 10 years. But in most of the communities that I work in southern Wisconsin, there are requests for changes almost every year if it's an actively growing community. And I'd like to think that when we do the plan, we get it perfect, that it's perfect forever. But, you know, things change in terms of right now, you know, the decline of retail and questioning how at-home office work will affect the market in the future. So the village has always enabled property owners to request changes to the comp plan. In fact, changes in the past, Oregon parks, for example, allowed single family in areas that used to be planned for two family, and two family uses in areas that used to be planned for multifamily. So those changes are part of keeping the plan contemporary. And the village has decided as a policy to be open to considering those changes. The question about the traffic math is true. If you have higher densities, even though each unit is generating less traffic, you have more traffic on the site. But this entire neighborhood, when it was planned with that dense central mixed use designation, which could allow 4-story development, that's in place now. It was planned at the very same time that the single family parts of this neighborhood were planned. And anybody buying a single family lot could have come in and looked at the plan, could have come in and looked at the zoning ordinance and seen what was likely to happen at the property. And I would, you know, stress that again, the proposed change would result in a lower maximum potential density and a lower maximum potential traffic than the designation of the property now currently enables. That may not make it worthy of approval, but I want to make sure that everybody understands how intensive the current designation is and that it represents the maximum development potential and the maximum traffic potential of any designation we have in the comp plan.
Thank you. I believe we have 2 more people willing to speak again. Corey Cook, I think you are up, and then Joel, you're next.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I'm having a hard time understanding is all the math yet. I guess first off, this is the first time I'm hearing of anything possibly being 4-story, either previously or in the future. You know, again, looking back to the covenants and proposals that have been put out in the past, it has always been 3-story, with the retail on the bottom, 2 stories of residential on the top. In fact, if you go back to June 4th, I believe it was Kyle that was presenting what was previously proposed. On each site, it was 29 units each, so about 58 total. What we've been hearing again is up to 2 60-unit buildings. Now, I understand this isn't necessarily what it will be, because there may not have been a developer or a landowner or a buyer that has stepped up to put that proposal in yet. But just hearing that, I think opens up the door to the possibility of it. So if I go from 60 units to 120 units, whether or not there's retail, there's undoubtedly going to be more traffic. And not to mention that to the west of us, you have the Highland of Netherwoods, which looks like it's slated to have upwards of 40 multifamily buildings there too. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure that there was a question in there, but I do believe that from memory that the town center, it may have been proposed for 3 stories, but the potential was there for it to go to 4 stories. And I could be wrong and be looking for correction on that, but Jack, you're raising your finger.
John, I was just going to comment, and this is something, and I'll be the first to admit that when Jefferson Crossing, which was a 60-unit apartment complex, was proposed for downtown, and it was in a very crowded downtown area. I mean, we all go down there around the bank and everything like that, and we actually, at the concern of some of the residents, and I think it was very viable, were concerned about traffic. And we did have a traffic study done. We were assured by the developer at the time that traffic would not be as you would expect it to be. They had done a lot of these buildings, and I kind of went into it with a little bit of skepticism. What I have been surprised now, Jefferson Crossing has been open, I believe, for 2 years now. And what came about from that was much less traffic than we ever anticipated. And those are 60 units that were full from the day they were literally completed and have remained full. We've not had traffic problems, parking problems, and that in the downtown, and not had any of the complaints. We had more complaints back when it was 4 homes over there in an old auto repair place than we've had with Jefferson Crossing. So I do think that kind of supports, or that does support what Mike Slavny was talking about, which generally multifamily is not as many traffic, what do you call them, cycles, Mike?
Peaks.
Well, yeah, I mean, trips.
Like daily.
Per unit. So, I mean, yes, I mean, undoubtedly the traffic will increase over what's there now. I mean, that's just the nature of it. It's just empty land right now. But, you know, I believe that when this was put in, this was part of the plan. Concerning the intersections, we do have money in the budget for the next 2 years to study the intersections both at Bergamot Boulevard, or well, at Alpine Parkway and Janesville or Jefferson, and also Jefferson and Bergamot Boulevard. We do foresee, you know, future improvements, probably first at Alpine Parkway and then followed with Bergamot Boulevard at a later date. But everything we've seen so far, traffic intersections operate on a level of service. These intersections still operate at a very respectable and safe level of service. There are peaks. Our village has, and any traffic study we've ever done in the village shows that the preschool opening, you know, that peak of what, 7:45 to 8 o'clock is jammed everywhere in the village. And it's also jammed at, what is it, 3:30 to 3:45. But for the remainder of the day, a lot of our intersections operate just fine. So that's, you know, from a traffic perspective, I understand people's concerns, and adding more traffic to a community is difficult, but it is part of, you know, the development over here and has been planned from day one.
Thanks, Jeff. Lastly, is Joel. Joel, would you like to comment?
Sure. My statement is that Oregon Center Drive, where does it end? It ends in Mulligan's parking lot. It's not even really a cul-de-sac. And my question is, what can be done about that? The farm that's between Mulligan's and the Methodist Church is in the township, I understand, and the village doesn't have jurisdiction over that. Yeah, how did that come about, and what can be, you know, you can't take down Mulligan's and run that back out to Jefferson. That probably was never the plan. A question about the design of Oregon Center Drive. It just seems really awkward. I could say stronger words, but I won't.
We were concerned on the village staff with that design. And a traffic study was done when Oregon Parks came in for its preliminary plat. And I mean, the whole neighborhood was studied with a traffic study. And the traffic study concluded that even though it is an awkward design and not conventional, And it would be more desirable to have it be a through street, that it functioned safely and without dangerous levels of congestion. So it was looked at and studied. Mr. Olson, I would agree with you, but given that what you said being accurate about the village not being able to force properties outside the village to comply with a more logical traffic flow, we did our homework and did the traffic study under DOT standards and accepted its conclusions back then. And again, it was with the current higher potential development concentration under the central mixed use category.
Thanks, Mike. I have not seen any more people step up, so I will just take another 10 seconds to see if anybody else has any other comments, questions, or anything else. If not, then I will wait. Okay, then I will close the public hearing.
Okay, I'm muted now.
Close of the joint public hearing for Plan Commission and the Village Board and end the public comment. Moving on to item D, response to public hearing questions by the Plan Commission and staff. Elise, have you got anything that you would like to sort of put out there? Or Mike?
Thanks, Mike, for filling in as my internet decided to drop out at a really convenient time. I think you did a great job answering the questions as we went along, so I would be happy to just answer any specific questions from the Planning Commission or Village Board.
Does anybody on the Plan Commission or the Village Board have questions of staff pertaining to any of these projects or any of the comments that have been made that you need to have clarified?
This is Patrick. I have a request for clarification. The question I asked Mike earlier, what I really wanted to know is how many dwelling units are different in the two proposals? If we keep it as is, so I'm obviously speaking of item number 4. If it's mixed commercial and residential, how many potential dwelling units are there versus the proposed change?
I appreciate that question. Because the setbacks for the central mixed use are 0 feet at property lines and the building can be built up to the sidewalk, the number of residential units per floor is higher under the central mixed use than under the mixed residential multifamily category that's being requested. However, that can be offset if the ground floor is all non-residential. So I have not done the math, but I would estimate that it is approximately the same number of residential units. If we get 3 floors of residential, but under the central mixed use, we could have that additional ground floor of non-residential uses on top of it.
Does anybody else have any comments, questions? I guess I don't really have a whole lot of questions either. I think it was nice to sort of hear the perspective of people in the community and see what their concerns were and where they stood on the project. But I think that we had a pretty good presentation by staff and have a pretty good understanding. You know, the question of The contentious one, I think right now really is the multifamily in Oregon Parks. And we're going to be taking these items one by one. So that everybody kind of understands the lay of the land. We're going to be taking these items one by one, and the Oregon Parks is the one that has the highest concern. It has right now the potential to be a 4-story building. I believe it has 1 story. It could be based on the downtown district that it currently is planned for. 1 floor commercial and 3 floors of apartments maxed out. Correct?
That is the potential. Remember that property currently has planned development zoning for a 3-story building with half of the ground floor, the front side of the ground floor being non-residential. But under the current land use category, an updated plan development could come in that, could have a 4th story on it based on
Got it.
on the height limitations.
Got it. Thank you. But when we set this up originally, when we went through the comprehensive plan, Mike pointed out that in the bottom right-hand corner of that Village of Oregon plan was a circle with different pieces of the pie. And we were very cognizant when we went through this that the pieces of that pie tried to match up as best as we could with what Oregon had at the time for numbers of single-family homes, multifamily homes, institutions of religion, schools, yada, yada, yada. And we have tried with every development that has come through to match that up. And the Oregon Parks neighborhood, as it was planned, has those pieces of the pie in there. And I think my opinion is that it's important that we try to keep the pieces of the pie in that area, because it is what makes a good neighborhood. It is what makes Oregon. It's what has made Oregon. It's just continuing it in a different shape, in a different form. But the pieces of the pie are there, and I think it's important to try to carry them through. So I'll step off my soapbox and we'll keep moving. Anybody else have questions of staff? If not, I'll move on to the next item, which is item E, which is discussion of the proposed comprehensive plan amendments by the Plan Commission. Are there anybody just want to have anything that they have to say about this on the village board or on the Plan Commission?
Don, I'll share my thoughts. With all the amendments, I'm in support of all the amendments, with the exception of number 4. And the reason I don't support number 4, several reasons. We've given up on a lot of commercial development in that area. That area has seen commercial development with Beehive and several of the other additions to it. And I feel that it's too soon to give up on that and propose multifamily. I appreciate Mike Slavny's perspective with regards to traffic and the potential impact. However, if I were a resident and I bought into that neighborhood 10 years ago or back in 2005, I'd be upset at the potential change in plans. So for those reasons, I do not support number 4.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Then let's move on to item F, which is the individual topics at hand. Plan Commission will make a discussion and possible recommendation of the comprehensive plan amendments to the village board. Item 1, discussion and possible recommendation to the village board on amendment number 1, 917, 919, and 947. And at least there was one more address in there because it's a duplex, correct?
Correct. 957.
And 957 Janesville Street, change to mixed residential and planned business. Anybody have any questions or comments on this? We have heard from one neighbor regarding this. Comments, questions? I'll put out my comment on this is I think it's a really nice infill project. I am not crazy about the potential for a gas station, convenience store, but that's just a placeholder. So that may end up being something different. I think that the building height is acceptable. I think the proximity to the neighboring buildings, 60 feet is, in architecture speak, it's the maximum allowed that separation between buildings that gives you a good sort of balance between window openings and fire protection requirements. So I think it gives a nice density, and if the developer goes through with what they're proposing on this with some elderly aspects or some lower income aspects, I think it's a great benefit to our community. So that's my opinion on the thing, and I'm happy to hear anybody else's. All right, seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to this.
I make that motion, Patrick.
So, Patrick had the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Larry.
Larry Marr for the second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion carries. Item 2 is discussion and possible recommendation to the village board on amendment number 2 for 769 Janesville Street and a change to 2-family residential. Are there any comments or questions on this item from anybody?
I have one question. At a previous meeting, the homeowner to the west expressed strong concerns about this project. We didn't hear any dissension tonight. Elise, was that resolved, or was there further dialogue between the potential property owner?
Thanks, Patrick. Yes, you're correct. We did not receive any more recent letter or comments from that neighbor. He is actually planning on moving out of the area, and we haven't heard from him since late July when we had that outdoor neighborhood meeting. But I do know that conceptually Habitat has looked at making some adjustments, taking both the comments from the neighbor and the comments from the Planning Commission and board into account. So when they're ready to come back with a GDP plan, you may see some changes, but we have not heard from that neighbor in the last probably 2+ months.
Thanks.
So with that being said, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, then I will open this for a motion to the village board. I'll make that.
I could make that motion. This is Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Mark made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second, Patrick.
Second by Patrick. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, discussion and possible recommendation to village board on the amendment number 3 for 250 and 200 North Bergamot Boulevard and 1002 Oregon Parks Avenue changed to 2-family residential. So Elise, can you point specifically with your little pointer to these areas?
The tan parcels here within this purple, okay. So north of Beehive and then the land between Oregon Parks Avenue and Bergamot Boulevard.
So these are the parcels that came in that were with the alleyway in the back that we've seen in Plan Commission?
Right, yeah, they showed a conceptual alley loaded duplex plan for the the parcels that are in the middle island here And then I believe 3 duplexes, which would be on this parcel, which would just have standard access from the road to the garage.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on this item? As a planning commission, we've seen this one a couple of times. We've asked them to make some changes and they have been responsive to that. Anybody have questions, comments? Seeing none, then I will ask for a motion to the village board regarding the recommendation.
This is Larry. I would have moved that we that we pass this amendment.
We have the motion by Larry. Is there somebody that wants to second that? I'll second it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4. This is the discussion and possible recommendation to the village board on amendment number 4, which is 200 Liberty Park Drive and 931 Oregon Center Drive, change to mixed residential. So let's have a discussion on this one because this seems to be the contentious item. Patrick, you've made it. You've made your opinion known that you're reluctant on this one. Is there anybody else who has a comment or question? So essentially, what we're talking about, and Elise, please clarify me if I'm wrong, is right now this is proposed as a commercial on the first floor with apartments above. And what they're asking for is to just go straight multifamily, correct? Is that an oversimplification?
That's correct. Yeah, there's a 2004 approved GDP for a 3-story building with commercial on the front half of the first floor and then residential in the back half of the first floor and then the second and third floors as well. So that's the existing GDP under the planned development zoning here. And then you're correct. They're proposing just to have that be entirely residential, no commercial.
This is Larry.
Allow for any residential?
I'm sorry, Eric, one more time, please.
Does the current designation allow for any residential, whether it's similar to the approved GDP or not?
Yes, it does allow for residential, just does not allow for residential on the first floor.
Thank you.
Larry, you had a question?
Yes, I wanted to comment that I was in support of what Patrick said in his comments, and I would not want to go ahead with this at this point. Give it some more time and to manage the changes that are going on in that area, and I do have concerns about the turnaround on a dead-end street there, and I think it would be we could get commercial in to come in, give it some time to develop. That possibility, I would see that as a good thing. So I would be opposed to this.
Thank you. Anybody else on the Planning Commission have a comment?
This is Scott. I've often been the holdout for allowing people to convert that commercial or retail or office space to residential. We've been through this in several areas of the village, and I've often been opposed to it because I would like to have places for commercial development. Should somebody want to take a shot at it. The highway locations are definitely where you get the visibility and the traffic count, and I don't know that this has quite as much visibility. The Bergamot apartment homes has proposed to us a couple of times to continue moving towards CC with more apartment homes, and that's a spot where I've held out and said no, that has the visibility. I think that should be held out for commercial space. There's enough traffic going by there and enough visibility that commercial may be viable. Wolf Street just last month or the month before came back to us for at least a half a dozen times now, asking to convert more of their first floor commercial space to residential. And again, I held out that they had some space there that was visible enough that I think it's viable for commercial. I'm not convinced that this is nearly as viable here. So I think at this time I'm okay with letting them forgo the commercial and stick with the multifamily development on this site.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jeannie?
Yeah, I completely agree with Scott. I understand Patrick and Larry's concerns about not wanting to lose potential commercial space. But we've seen the prime commercial space take a really long time in this area to develop. It's just been developing in the last couple of years, and that's right along the highway. These lots, just the visibility isn't there. And if it was going to already include commercial and multifamily, I would go ahead with trying to get these lots developed into multifamily and get them on the tax roll. Otherwise, I fear that they are going to stay grass and weeds for many years.
Thank you. Anybody else?
This is Mark speaking.
Yeah.
I share the concerns that especially Patrick brought up about the concerns of the neighborhood, the residents, and so I also oppose.
Okay. Thank you. Well, it seems anybody else have any other comments or questions? All right. Well, then it seems like we are at a position where we need to make a decision by voting. So I will open up for a motion to approve a recommendation to the village board on amendment number 4 for 200 Liberty Park Drive and 931 Oregon Center Drive, a change to mixed residential. And so that everybody understands what you're voting for is if you vote aye in favor of this, you will be changing the existing plan, which is a half a floor of commercial space and 2 floors of apartments, to 3 floors of apartments. So that's what we're talking about changing here on this development. Does everybody understand that?
Would you repeat that again, please?
Currently, the plan is for a half a floor of commercial space and 2 floors of apartments. What we would be voting to change that to, if you vote positive, would be to change it to 3 floors of apartments.
Got it.
Okay. And I think there's enough sort of variation in everybody's opinion that at least maybe we do this as a roll call vote.
I can do that.
Sure, Joy.
Or Joy, can you do that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a second on that?
Oh, hey, thank you.
I don't think we have a motion. Do we?
This is Jeannie. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the changes to number 4 to the comprehensive plan.
Thank you for that, Jeannie. Thank you, Joy and Elise, for keeping me straight. Is there a second on that? I'll make the second. Okay, Scott makes the second. And then Joy, can we have a roll call?
Yes. Spano,
Aye.
Molden,
Opposed?
Severson,
Opposed.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Meyer,
Yes.
Marr,
No.
and Smith back.
Opposed.
So the motion fails. So moving on then, item 5. Discussion of possible recommendation to the village board on amendment number 5 for 307, 301, and 300 North Bergamot Boulevard and 301 Liberty Park Drive changed to single-family residential.
I'll make that motion, Patrick.
And this is just housekeeping, so that everybody understands. Thank you, Patrick. Is there a second on that?
I'll second, Mark.
Second by Mark. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. Item number 6, discussion and possible recommendation to the village board on amendment number 6, Anderson County Parks change to park and open space. Again, this is just kind of a housekeeping item. Do I have a motion to approve that?
This is Jeannie.
This is Larry. I would have proposed that we approve the amendment.
All right, motion by Larry, second by Jeannie.
Sure.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. So we've been at this for a couple of hours. Why don't we take about a 10-minute break? And then we'll come back and we'll finish up the rest of this agenda. How does that sound for everybody? So I've got 8:26 on my clock. We'll convene back here in 10 minutes and start this back up.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. Good job.
All right, so I've got 8:36.
Okay. John, just to remind you, we still need to do items, or item G.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Yep, I noticed that after I apologize. It was probably a bad time, but
No worries. Just want to make sure you get that.
so if everybody's back, we'll get moving. It's 8:36. And so item G, the adoption of resolution number 20-33, recommending parcels to be amended in the comprehensive plan to the village board. Now, the actual parcels will reflect what we voted in approval of, and that is items 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So those items will be amended in the comprehensive plan on our information.
Sorry to make you dizzy here, just trying to scroll to it right here. So I will remove 4 before John comes in and signs this at Village Hall, and then this resolution will move forward to the board at their October 19th meeting. So we'll just need a motion and a second to approve this resolution, and we'll get it all cleaned up.
Okay, so we'll make is there somebody that wants to make a motion to approve this resolution number 20-33 as posted, with the exception of item 4 will be struck?
I'll make that motion, Patrick.
Patrick makes the motion. Is there somebody that wants to second?
I'll second it, Larry.
Larry seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And then, so everybody's aware, as an FYI, item H, the village board will be considering the adoptive comprehensive plan amendment that we have recommended this evening at their October 19th, 2020 meeting at 5 p.m. on Zoom.
John?
Yes.
This is Mike Slavny, and I see Elise is here. As I understand it then, and this is really a question for the benefit of the public that's participated tonight, the issue of item 4, the amendment for the large lots on in Oregon parks, that's over for this year. The village board cannot resurrect that. The plan commission's denial is what counts.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that clarification.
It was good. An active break now.
Moving on, item 9, public appearances. Item A is something that we are going to need to appoint an acting chair for because I have been involved in this project. Is there somebody that would like to, do we have to vote on it, or can somebody just appoint themselves, or?
John, do you want me to take over? I can, since it's a joint meeting for the village board, I could just take over for this part.
Oh, that'd be marvelous.
Sure.
Thank you, Jeannie. I will step back.
Okay. All right, so this is 9 public appearances. Item A is a discussion and possible recommendation to the village
I
board
think you may have had it open twice.
regarding amending Phase 2 Specific Implementation Plan, SIP, for Beehive Homes. We have a revised fencing plan. Do we have a representative from Beehive Homes here to talk about this?
Okay.
Well, I suppose I can, since I'm abstaining.
Sure.
Simply put, what it is the fence that they're showing in this drawing is what they are actually going to be putting in, not a concept that we had presented earlier. The generator has actually been placed. The fence that goes around it actually shows the location that they need to have for access to the generator. So this is just kind of a housekeeping item. And that's it. It's going to match existing. It's going to be a cedar fence around the generator, and there you have it.
Questions from planning commission members on this item? If there are none, then I would entertain a motion to approve.
This is Mark.
Motion, Patrick.
So we have a motion by Patrick Mozon and a second by Mark Severson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed and abstaining?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, back to you, John.
Thanks, Jeannie. Item B, discussion and possible action by the Plan Commission regarding amending the site plan for Willy Enterprises. This is in regards to a fencing change and a salt storage shed. You have some information in your packet, as well as some updated information that Elise had. But Elise, can you give us a little bit of background on what's going on with this, please?
Sure. So back in 2016, Willy and Willy Enterprises was issued a CUP for a vehicle repair maintenance shop at 748 Cusick. That CUP did outline, it listed outdoor storage as a use here, and it did have some guidance with regards to fencing. It asked for an 8-foot tall solid wood or wood-like fence on areas where the storage was visible from Cusick and Netherwood Road, and allowed a chain link fence with colored slats in areas where it would not be visible from Cusick or Netherwood Road. Since that time, Brad has been developing his property, and the fencing is one of those areas that still needs to be completed. He, as he was getting proposals together for fencing, wanted to come back here and clarify both the height of the fence as well as the materials. He's requesting potentially a 6-foot high fence in this area. He's also requesting that it be entirely chain link with some sort of either slat or a screening material fabric that would screen the area in the back and make it not visible. So those are the kind of elements with the fence: height, material, and making sure that it is still screened. And then he is also, in the meantime, building a sort of snow removal, winter property maintenance type business, and has need for an accessory structure, which would look something like this in its final state, for the storage of salt, which would, be picked up by trucks and then go out to different properties and do the snow removal and salt storage. That was not originally shown on the site plan. So this was what was previously approved for the site plan. Does not show any accessory structure and just notes 8-foot chain link fence with colored slats, but doesn't really specify which sides that would be on. The proposed plan shows the approximate location of where this accessory structure would be. Couple concerns and just things to consider with the accessory structure. What he's proposing is a Versatube type kind of carport that can be purchased from Menards. Don't believe it has the concealed fasteners, which we require in other parts of the business park. We just required that for the Track D expansion last winter. It also is rather tall. So Brad is proposing to put it on, let's see, get back to this, some concrete blocks to raise it up so that would be easier when a dump truck comes with the salt to unload it. It would just be enclosed on the 3 sides and have a roof, but the salt would be covered with tarp, and the color would match the color of the building, but the height would be 13 foot 7 inches tall at the peak of the roof. It's about 388 square feet, 18 and a half wide by 21 feet long. Here are a couple pictures. This was taken probably a week or 2 ago behind Brad's building. The construction actually had started on the shed before we discussed with him that would need to be amended on the site plan. So you can see that would be approximately where it would go, and it's approximately at the height where it would be. Just for scale reference, here's a tall type septic truck. You can see the relative height there. This is driving west on Netherwood Road. You can see right here, here's the back of Brad's building. And then as you get a little bit closer to Cusick, there are some trees that screen a lot of Brad's building from Netherwood Road. This is a view actually just from Google Street View of the building, just so you can see the color and everything. Also, we had a call with John a couple days ago just in preparation for this meeting, and we're discussing other fences that are in the business park there. This is Track D's fence that I'm standing here at Ticey's new building looking north. They have a 7-foot tall chain link fence at their location at 350 Braun Road, and I did pull the site plan for this Track D building, and 7-foot chain link without any kind of slats was what was specified in the site plan, and that is what they have here on site. So you can see into their working area in the back there. With regards to the fence, I wanted to just bring this to Planning Commission to see how you wanted to sort of set precedent in the business park if you felt comfortable with a shorter fence or wanted to make it consistent with maybe what Track D has. And then with regards to the salt storage shed, I think the height is something we should consider. If it was a 6-foot fence, the structure would be towering about 7 feet over the top of the fence. 8-foot fence, obviously it's going to be a little bit less difference, but still 5 feet taller than that. Also, we did learn that the DOT requires that more than 1,000 pounds of salt are stored on site. The salt storage shed, that's quite the tongue twister, should be registered with the DOT. So we would ask that if that use continues on the site, that Brad have it registered with the DOT, and that way we can ensure that it's being inspected and the salt is being covered properly to prevent leaching into nearby wetlands and all of that. So I know Brad is on the phone with us too, so he'd be happy, I'm sure, to answer any questions or talk about his operation on the site.
Great, thank you, Elise. Brad, is there anything that you would like to add to this?
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I want to talk about is the fence. I think that I understand setting the precedent, so I understand what Elise is saying, and I really can't argue that. But I could argue that I believe our 6 foot with privacy slats would look better than tracties without privacy slats. And since we just completed our parking lot, it's actually really nice back there. We the proposed plan and what was approved was actually gravel, but we've since put in crushed asphalt, which really doesn't make any dust, and it's compacts really hard, and the crushed asphalt looks really, really nice. So we've already done an upgrade there, and our parking lot is very well organized now, compared to before, but we were waiting for the site contractor to get it finished. So in my other thought on a 6 and an 8 foot fence, most of the vehicles that we work on are going to be hidden by a 6 foot. And if we go with an 8 foot, some vehicles like taller box trucks, the maximum allowable vehicle height without special permits is 13'6". You can see that KG septic truck in there. That's probably like the tallest type of vehicle we work on, which you would really only see the top of it if we had a 6 foot fence. Those couple vehicles in the front there, I don't think you would see. So I think a 6 foot would meet the needs of the village, and I think it would look really nice. I mean, the main reason for it is the cost. And if I'd have known this when we were originally going through the process, I probably would have tried to do it back then. But the cost is significant between a 6 and an 8 foot. I mean, you're talking the difference between building a fence and a wall, especially with privacy slats, because we get a lot of really strong winds from the west out here. I'd actually argue to say it's the windiest spot in Oregon. And so it has to be engineered and really solidified to keep it from becoming damaged in a strong windstorm. Whereas a 6 foot is a little bit easier to do because it doesn't have as much surface area. So I think the 6 foot would do everything that we need it to do and look good in the industrial park. I've spoken with Jason Ticey, the owner of Ticey Printing, and he's on board with it. He really has no concerns. So yeah, that's what I would like you guys to consider.
Yep. With that being said, let's open it up for Plan Commission comments. Is there anybody that has any questions for the applicant or staff or just in general?
This is Patrick. I have, I guess, one question or reaction. And we talked about a 7 foot fence at Trocty. Have you looked at that as an alternative and the cost, potential cost savings?
Yes, I have, but when you put the privacy slats on it, talking with the fence contractors, it's still really, really high. The higher you get it, the more expensive it is. And I guess my argument to that is the ugliest stuff that we would have is our dumpsters, and a 6 foot fence would cover a dumpster too. So I think that yes, I've looked into it. It's a little bit cheaper than an 8 foot, but a 6 foot is really what is the most economically feasible for me.
Brad, where's your dumpster location?
The dumpster location would be right on the back side of the main building. So the northeast corner. So run your right there.
Okay.
That's where a dumpster is.
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Given how far this is off the road and stuff, I think it's fine from a public perspective. It's not going to be noticeable, anything different. if Jason Ticey's on board, I can imagine his new office probably overlooks this area. And if he's had an opportunity to see this and is okay with it, I guess it works for me. But my question, I don't know if Mike Slavny's still online or at least, I don't, can we grant an exception to that requirement in this zoning district? Or, you know, what would that involve?
Please.
I guess I defer to Mike there. I think, you know, the outdoor storage use is pretty clear in that an 8-foot fence is required for that area. I think the year on the Tracty fence, I believe it was after our code was adopted. Does that sound right, Mike? After 2006, somewhere right around in there. But you know, we don't have a lot of other sites available still in the industrial park. So, you know, we may not have other outdoor storage uses, but that tends to be a use that I know can get rather out of hand. And just driving by Brett's property on a fairly regular basis, I know that there are often, you know, there are pickup trucks, but they often have lift kits, and other taller vehicles seem to go through there fairly often. So, agree, you'd probably just see the tops of the vehicles, but again, I don't know if that's enough to grant a 2-foot reduction in the height of the fence.
Right. So,
go ahead, Mike. I didn't realize you're on.
So our zoning code would require full compliance if this is, you know, when it's a site plan process or a conditional use process. If the property is proposed as a planned development, then flexibilities from the ordinance standards can be requested and can be considered by the Plan Commission and Village Board. But our site plan process and conditional use process don't provide the ability to grant those kinds of flexibilities.
You know, I've read through this and I can appreciate the cost difference. And I think from memory, when Ticey went through, not Ticey, sorry, the name is in there. When Tracty went through, the fence was not so much for screening as much as it was for security. They had their outdoor storage area was underneath a covered area that had solid walls with some like fiberglass sheets in it for daylight to get through. We made them put in a fairly substantial structure for their outdoors protection or outdoor storage. So the fence that was in, I don't know if it really, you know, thinking back, was for visibility as much as it was just for site security for them. I'm reluctant to set a precedent to go to a 6-foot fence. I agree with you, Elise. You know, pickup trucks are taller than 6 feet at the cab. A lot of SUVs can get right up there, especially the bigger ones. And certainly the truck that's in there right now is well over 6-7 feet, and the building itself is kind of crowned. I'm not a fan, I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of the plastic slats. They look fine for the first 3 months until UV, the daylight, sunlight starts to hit them, and then they deteriorate. And by the time they're 5 or 7 years old, they're all look like a grayish pink color. And if you use a weed whacker around the bottom, they all look chewed up because they've just been hit. So I think that we had agreed to allow them a chain link fence on the back side, and you know, put plastic slats in it, fine. But I certainly think that on the Kushik Parkway side, and on the south side, and the north side, it needs to be a solid fence. And, you know, that's the fence. And I think that we've got our zoning code in place for a reason. And this business park is not meant to be an industrial park. It is industrial type uses, but the type of uses and the way that businesses are run out here, they're pretty nice. They're pretty good. So I think that we need to sort of maintain a standard. And that means that we need to have the project be held to the rules that are in our zoning code. And that's just on the fence. This salt storage building, at least the concrete block, is that like a masonry unit 8x16, or is this like concrete leftover stuff like from Lycon concrete blocks?
We can do either. He called it a mafia block. Maybe Brad, you can explain what that is, but Jeff Grenier described it as a concrete mafia block.
Yeah, I mean, we can do a concrete foundation or the mafia block, but yeah, I guess it's whatever you guys would like to see. But yeah, because the goal is to get it up off the ground, so that the salt doesn't really rot it out, so the salt's up against concrete. That's kind of the main goal for that. I'm not opposed to anything there. And we might not even finish the thing either. So we might just scrap that idea as well. So I guess my main concern at the moment is still the fence. I mean, I understand what you guys are saying. I just keep coming back to Tracti though. I mean, they have lots of outdoor storage with stuff kind of everywhere, and I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying, I mean, they have stuff that's not under the canopy, and it's on 3 sides of the building, visible from Cusick, visible from Braun, and visible from the bike path.
We're not going to get into a debate on one person's use towards another. We need to maintain a conversation about your project specifically. And again, what we are bringing into a conversation is the fact that the difference in timing about when your projects were approved and the requirements that you had agreed to in your original site plan approval.
Yep, I understand. Now, the one part though, because I remember those meetings, and I think the general contractor, both the site contractor and the general, and I believe even Jeff, we were all kind of surprised when we found out about the wood, because our drawings all show chain link.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were really surprised to hear about the wood or wood-like, because we didn't really even know about that until we started talking to Elise about it.
Right, and that's what's been recorded in the conditional use permit.
Yeah, I remember when we went through this process, the fencing was an issue. I remember the requirement to have it screened, and that's where the slats came, because it was to be a chain link fence. I told Brad and I told Elise and Mike, I don't ever remember us discussing a wood fence, because I was thinking, how would a wood fence hold up, in a vehicle service area, because there's a lot of things that get parked and moved and all that kind of stuff. So that was my opinion on that.
I guess Mike Slavny, where you were stating though, because this was a site plan and not plan development with a GDP SIP, we really don't have the ability with the reviews that have happened so far to change the fence height requirement, correct? From the 8 feet.
Well, we can't vary from the requirements of the code. We can add requirements, but we can't reduce them under a site plan or conditional use process.
So maybe the discussion should be more on the fence material, and sounds like the height at least at this point, unless Brad would come back with a plan development zoning request, could not be lowered.
Correct.
Okay.
And I just add one more comment on that. And Brad, this is just to protect you. You know, the original site plan for this obviously did not include the salt shed. If you feel you are going to do that in the future, now's the time to do it. In other words, to use analogy in your work, the hood's open. So, you know, if you're going to do it, I would suggest you continue on with that process. Otherwise, it's not part of the permitted site plan, so you'd either have to take it down, you know, right away or permit it.
Got it. Yep. Understood.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I need to know as far as the shed is, what does the village want to see? Because to be honest, I didn't really know. Well, because and this might be a bad example, but I remember growing up as a kid, my dad had the shop where Walgreens was, and I remember we just built a shed behind it. We just bought a Menard shed and put it up. Now I know times have changed. As 20 years ago, so that's why I just thought we could start it, because I didn't know that it would matter being what was the plan was a temporary building. But then it turned out you can't have temporary buildings, so I kind of need to know what you guys are going to want to see out of that, and then I'll make a decision on if we just want to proceed or scratch that. So I guess that's what I need to know what to do as far as the shed.
Well, I could identify some requirements we have for structures. If concrete is used on the exterior of a building higher than the foot or 18 inches of foundation wall you tend to get on a structure, it has to be a decorative concrete. Now, they make these large module blocks with the decorative finish. I'm looking on Google Images, and about half of the images that I see under that term are plain, and about half have some sort of pattern stamped on them. We would require, we prohibit the plain concrete finish. And that's regardless of whether it's tilt up or modular block or, you know, masonry. We also require that any exterior wall in this zoning district for the business park use, if they're using a panel system, the panel needs to interlock so that the fasteners are concealed, typically by a panel overlap, rather than being bolted, you know, visibly to the supporting structure. So those would be the two requirements in our code that the current building, as proposed here, that Elise has up, you know, those panels, I suspect those have visible fasteners, and then the kind of blocks that are being proposed come in a way that's acceptable, but also come in a way that's not acceptable. So we would require the finish, whether it's a rock face or it's, you know, stamped to look like smaller module blocks, or it's stamped to look like some sort of natural rock. So I think a wide variety of those are available, but we don't allow the plain unfinished concrete more than 18 inches from ground level.
Understood. Yep. So I guess what I'll do for that, the way you're making it sound, I need to work with Jeff, the architect, to come up with a plan, and then we need to revisit it.
Yeah. I
Is
think
that-
I think it would be best to start that way. I think you have a better chance of accommodating the needs of your business by starting thinking about this kind of from scratch.
Yep, that's fine. I'm okay with that. That makes sense. I just didn't know. So,
All right, well, thank you, Brad. Then I guess what we will do is we will not act on this motion at all. And we will keep going with the agenda, and you, Brad, can come back with a decision on how you would like to move forward in the future.
what about the fence though?
Yeah, I was gonna ask John, do we want to give him some direction about fence material? If we stay with what was previously, I guess, laid out in the conditional use permit, we would be recommending 8-foot chain link fence with slats on the west side, and then on all other sides that would be a wood or wood-like solid fence. We don't make any changes, that would be still what he would be held to. Otherwise we could consider chain link with some other kind of screening material on other sides.
Okay. What is the opinion of the Plan Commission on this?
This is Patrick. I have no objection to chain link. I would rather see the fencing material complete all the way around as opposed to changing materials. I agree, John, the slats over time can become damaged. The slats can be replaced too. It doesn't sound like we're talking about changing the height anyhow, but I would be resistant. I'd be open to a 7-foot fence, but I would be resistant to anything lower. I think security, kids climbing over it, that's a concern I have. So bottom line, chain link's okay with me as long as there's something to obscure the view.
Thank you. Anybody else? I think that that seems like a decent enough compromise, but we don't have right now the flexibility even to go to a 7-foot high fence, correct? Because that's outside of the zoning code requirements.
Correct.
So the flexibility that can we even say that a chain link fence with plastic slats would be acceptable because it's not within our zoning code?
I think, Mike Slavny, that would be, so this is the section about outdoor storage. This is where the language about walls and fencing shall be a minimum of 8 feet in height and designed to completely screen all materials. I don't believe it says anything about wood versus chain link with slats. It does require a minimum opacity of 80%.
Which is almost solid. I think the slats would comply with that because I think they have less than 20% open space. Elise, I didn't, research that question. I think we would also want to look in the fence requirements in the code to see in that zoning district if there are any limitations on fence materials. So I can't answer that question off the cuff.
Another question, some of the fence contractors discussed like some type of fabric that you see on like baseball diamonds, stuff like that. They said that works up really well and actually holds up to the elements better than the plastic slats do as well.
And I know the fencing requirements do not address that fabric because when the code was written, aside from erosion control fencing, that kind of fabric really wasn't used for fencing. So I'm not opposed necessarily to that idea, but I believe it's not possible unless we go with a plan development or a code amendment.
To comment on the fence standard, Mike, for the acceptable materials for constructing fence, landscape walls, and decorative posts include wood, stone, brick, wrought iron, chain link, and wire mesh.
There you go.
It doesn't speak to, it does speak to slats. You're just saying that the fabric, because it wasn't available, can't be considered because it's not expressly listed.
Yes, and you know, maybe it's time for a code amendment, but for right now, it's not an acceptable material.
So I wonder if another possible solution could be screening with landscaping. Some dense.
The fence is probably right on the property line, isn't it, Brad?
No,
Okay.
it's actually not. And we thought about that too.
Is this the property line, this solid line, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There is a drainage ditch through there. That it is pretty much always wet, so you can't mow it. You can kind of see it where that one single tree is right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a drainage ditch through there. So that's always wet, but we could line that with landscape screening as well. So
So it seems like the only thing that we can make a decision on with the fence is we can approve the fence at 8 feet in chain link with plastic slats, or 8 feet as approved with wood on 3 sides and chain link on the east side. Correct?
Sounds like what I heard from Mike Slavny.
Correct. I think that we were looking at chain link for the gates. That's what I recall the site plan showing. Could we go back to that, Elise?
Yeah, and it this note, I know it's hard to read, it says 8-foot chain link fence with colored slats. It just points to this side, but it's not clear on the site plan if that refers to all of the fencing or just that side. So that's where
I think based on the fence material requirements that you looked up, I think you've got some flexibility. I think John identified the 2 materials that would be acceptable: chain link or wood. Chain link could include plastic slats, and 8 feet needs to be the minimum height.
okay.
So do we need to, because of what's on his approved site plan in the record, is cedar fence on the north and south, and also on the west, except for the gates. And the gates and the east side were approved as chain link with plastic slats. Do we need to make a motion to approve an alternate for the entire fence to be 8-foot chain link with plastic slats?
I think so, Mike. Would we need that recorded as a acceptable change on the site plan?
Correct.
Okay. So we're so for right now, we're just worried about the fence. We're not talking about the salt storage building, because what has been started and what has been proposed is in non-compliance. So we'll just remove that from the equation, and they will come back at a future time with that salt storage building if they choose to do so. But for right now, I will make a motion to approve an alternate for the fence to be 8 foot tall with plastic slats with 80% opacity on all sides as shown on the site plan, and that the applicant must obtain a fencing permit from the village prior to installation. And that They must install a honey locust tree near the south side of the parking lot to complete the original requirements of the site plan. I'm just going off of what Elise had for her staff recommendations.
I'll second that, Patrick.
Could I ask a quick question? Because you
Yeah,
were
Mike.
specifying plastic slats, but don't they also make aluminum slats? I mean, do we want to be flexible and say it could either be one or the other?
We can. I'm almost positive the aluminum would be considerably more than the plastic, though.
Okay, I defer then, if that's the case.
As long
The
as it
other-
would meet the opacity requirements, any kind of slat would be fine, right?
Yeah.
And John, I think Elise, forgive me here, but didn't something in there say it was supposed to be green? I think Brad had mentioned that. And I think typically we want the slats or whatever to kind of match the building color, which is what Brad indicated to me that he would prefer. And I think it would look nicer.
I didn't see any reference to green. I just saw a reference to colored slats, but yeah, I would definitely want them to be matching the building if possible.
Not what you wanted, Brad?
Yeah, because I remember from when we originally did it, it was supposed to be green. But I think it'll look better matching the building as well. So that's what I want, yeah.
All right, so I'll amend my motion so that the plastic slats are to approximate the color of the building. Patrick, will you amend your second?
I'll amend my second.
All right, does everybody understand the motion that's in front of them? Joy, do you have that?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion to change the fence has been approved. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
All right, next public appearance is a discussion with Jim Lease regarding the conceptual Netherwood North Main Soden development. Elise, can you give us a little bit of background on this, please?
Sure, let me scroll to this page. So you all are likely familiar with this site. This is right across from Walgreens along Netherwood Road. This site is owned by Mary Jo Lease, Jim Lease's mother, and was the original farm site for the family. This site is currently shown in our comprehensive plan as planned neighborhood. So if you remember that pie chart of potential uses, variety of uses are envisioned here for the future. This is currently zoned as SR4, our single family residential district. Jim is looking to start some development on the lot and would like to build 3 duplexes here on the corner of Soden and Netherwood. He's included a couple different potential plans for the whole site, as well as some initial stormwater calculations on the site. At this point, Jim hasn't come forward with any sort of, master plan other than this was put together by Supreme Structures when they were originally talking with Jim about what could fit there. I know Jim is hoping that these duplexes would be, to be directed towards seniors and made available at an affordable rate. He's envisioning kind of a larger scale senior housing development in the future. Again, not quite sure what that, how that would be managed or what it would look like. And then probably some sort of mixed commercial development on the corner of North Main and Netherwood. I think we've been discussing this with Jim for over a year now about moving forward on this site, and the staff has made it, I think, pretty clear our position that we're concerned about making sure that stormwater and uses and access on the site are thought about sort of holistically. This is a really important key site on our entrance corridor to the village, and we kind of get one chance to do this right. I would hate to see that you know, the development of the duplexes would sort of precede everything else, and then, you know, come to find out later that maybe that location would be better for, you know, an entrance or stormwater pond, and then end up losing potential valuable real estate for, you know, a senior housing complex or some commercial development elsewhere on the site. So we wanted to bring this forward to the Planning Commission and ask you to give Jim a little bit of direction as to what level of detail you would like to see before moving forward on the lot. Obviously, if he would like to do duplexes here, that would involve a rezoning. Single family would not currently allow duplexes, and then also a CSM to divide out those lots. So I'll scroll to, this is approximately what he's thinking for the duplex lot layout. This would be a potential drive into the senior housing complex. This lines up with Thompson Drive across Netherwood. So he's worked with Chuck Nunn, his civil engineer, on stormwater calculations initially for the site. And what they're proposing is to have the runoff from the duplex lots actually run into the street, and then over design the stormwater ponds for all of the development on the site, assuming, you know, potential future impervious areas and lot coverage. They show a couple different lots here, but again, obviously this doesn't, these aren't exact. I think our concern too is that the duplexes would get built, and then, you know, it might be a very long time before any other development would happen on the lot, and those ponds wouldn't get built, you know, perhaps for many years. So again, looking for you all to give some direction to Jim, and we're happy to answer any questions. I know Jim and Chuck and Tim Thorson are also on the line, so they can answer any questions as well.
Okay. Thanks, Elise. Does Planning Commission have any questions or comments on this? Thoughts?
This is Patrick. I'll chime in. I really like the proposal. I'm a little uncomfortable with the phasing, but I like the step down of the duplexes. I like the creative use of the land. I would be willing to vote for the duplexes, but the rest of the proposal would need to come in as a final proposal at some point. In other words, I wouldn't split into 3 different phases, because I think that is a critical, as Elise pointed out, that is a critical point. I think there's enough real estate there that I'm comfortable committing to the duplexes, knowing that a solution could be found for the remainder of the lot.
Thank you. Anybody else? I mean, I'll put my 2 cents into this. Having seen how things are operated with this, I understand that Jim is anxious to get the 3 duplex lots, but there are so many other overarching issues with the development that are concerning to me. First of all, if we go to this concept plan, which is not necessarily the one that he's looking at because he has changed people that he's working with. On the right-hand side, the commercial development, the parking lot is just sort of really confusing. And I would really want to try to develop and strengthen that corner. This is a very important corner in our community. As you come into it, I would want to have a building at that corner that engages the street. It engages everything. It activates that street corner rather than having a parking lot there. I also think that in this concept, there was not a whole lot of stormwater that was taken into consideration. I think that the lot as a whole slopes from right to left or west to east. So all of that water is going to want to go into these duplex lots. And I think that that sort of needs to be hammered out and understood prior to us giving any kind of approval. And then regarding the duplex lots, I just think that there was a prototypical floor plan that was given and it was just dropped onto that site without any consideration about where those curb cuts are with proximity to the corner, where those backyards are with respect to each other. I think that there is an answer in there in that same area that could be much better, is my opinion. I think that we want to see this. This is a great piece of property in the village, and we're only going to get one chance to do it. I want to see this thing come in with more detailed information, possibly even a CSM, so that we know where the stormwater is going, so that we know who's liable for the maintenance and the taking care of that stormwater. And that then whoever comes in to buy these pieces of property that are not the duplex understands what they're getting into, and that they understand what they're supposed to do as part of their obligation as owners of that land and members of the community. Anybody else?
I would just add that I think it's the staff's position that we would like to see this come back as a planned development and see a GDP, as you mentioned, with a plat CSM to see how all of this would be managed and how the stormwater would function and how the lots would work together. Knowing that a rezoning would need to happen for the duplexes anyway to be built, to make that change from the single family zoning. I think this is our opportunity, like you've mentioned, to understand how the site would function as a whole and try to make the best use of this really important piece of property.
From my perspective, I've talked to Jim about this a lot. In reiterating what Elise and John said, this really should be platted because there's going to be many different uses here. There's going to be the stormwater requirement. I know Chuck Nons worked on the stormwater and I spoke with him the other day, and he did admit that they needed to account for a lot more area for stormwater than, say, what this original concept plan allowed. But concept plans are always great, but where it really comes down to, where's the topography out there? How will it be managed? Will these be private ponds? Will they be wanting to dedicate them to public, which I don't foresee? But usually some of these private things end up becoming our neck of the woods because they don't get taken care of. Is it going to be taken care of by an association? I agree completely with John. There's a lot of questions here that I see from an engineering standpoint, as well as just from a long-term operations standpoint, that really need to be looked at much beyond just the duplexes. I like the idea of the duplexes over there along Soden because it is a great transition from the single family residential. There's some nice homes over there on Soden and what is that, the court over there? But Haler Court, thank you.
Haler.
Yeah, so that's what I would encourage, rather than, you don't want to just chunk this off right now and then say, well, stormwater is going to be dealt with in the future, and we don't know really what that will entail.
Yep. Charles, you have to activate your mic. There you go. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So my name is Chuck Nahn, and I was hired by Jim Lease. I'm a stormwater engineer. I've been doing stormwater engineering for close to 40 years. And I talked to Jeff about this originally, and his gut feel was that small blue rectangle set aside for stormwater was, in fact, he thought it was a little bit small. And so I said, well, there's a methodology in TR55, the rainfall runoff modeling that we do all the time for any type of development, where you can do some preliminary sizing of the stormwater needed based on the land use proposed. And it was highlighted in this email, but it basically is the ratio of the Q coming in, the flow coming in versus the flow coming out. you can look at that ratio and you can preliminarily size what's needed there for stormwater storage. And so we went ahead and used the village ordinance to take the 100-year post-development to the 10-year pre-development, actually generated flows for that entire 3.8 acre parcel. And we came up with some sizing, and Jeff was exactly right that 5,300 square feet was not sufficient. It was more like 11,732 square feet. That wasn't something we just picked from the sky. That was based on a calculation in the TR55 manual. And then we looked at, okay, you know, where are some ways we could lay these things out? And we came up with a couple configurations of stormwater detention that are shown in there, but that's where the 11,700 square feet came from. We understand there's a difficulty with the timing of this. Obviously, the duplexes would be developed first. I have done a number of calculations where the county and the regulators would allow a certain amount of runoff to go off unchecked as long as we oversize the other basins. And that's why we consider the entire 3.8 acres as being developed into the land use that was shown there. So I think, I know what Jeff's saying, that it's just a master plan now kind of showing conceptually where the stormwater is. I think if we were to embark on maybe doing a rezoning and a replanting of the entire 3.8 acre parcel, that would be something that you would know then, hey, this is going to be set aside for stormwater. It's not going to be, ignored in the future, I guess. What we'd like to do is maybe continue with the CSM for the 3-lot duplex, as well as going for the rezoning and the replanting of the entire 3.8 acre parcel at the same time. I don't know if that's possible or not, but that's what we'd like.
I think that I understand that the driving force in this is the duplexes. I'm not even comfortable with the layout for the duplexes right there. I take a look at where do you put it? Let's take the corner lot. Where do you put your curb cuts on that? That's a busy street, and all of a sudden you've got a double wide curb cut that's right at the corner, and you've got another one that's got a double wide curb cut right onto a really busy street. I just think that there needs to be some thought about these duplexes and the layouts, and maybe not just use some cookie cutter floor plan to come up with a concept of how do we get this to work that's better. And then as far as for the rest of that development, we need to take off the hat that says, okay, I'm an architect, I'm an engineer, and how do we look at this as a person who wants to buy this piece of property? I want to know sort of what the direction is that the village is looking for, that I know that when I buy this piece of property, I'm liable for detention at this location, that I can get this much square footage of building on here. The layout that we've got right now is just 3 lots and then whatever's left over, in my opinion. I want to see what is on our screen right now, but with more information, so that not only do we have the answers for the duplexes that want to get built, but for everything else to move forward and for us to feel comfortable, so that when it does get developed and we're maybe not even on the plan commission, that village, that image and that expectation is carried through because we did our job now. And I don't think it's there.
Are you asking where the driveway would be on Soden Drive?
Both of them. I mean, on Soden Drive, you've got a duplex that has a curb cut that's looks like it's within 20 feet of the corner. And then you've got a duplex that's got a double wide onto
Featherwood.
Thank you. Netherwood right there. This Netherwood is, I wouldn't want to back out onto Netherwood like that. Right
I
past
live in
that.
Netherwood.
I know.
And there's two duplexes right across the street from that duplex.
Right, and you
They both
also
come
are
right out
further
on the
down
dot
the
street.
road, not right at the intersection, not right across the street from a Walgreens, which is very busy.
One of them is right next to Walgreens. It's just the width of a retaining pond to the east of it. That's the one my brother owns. Then there's Thompson Drive, and there's a duplex on. Actually, if you look at the map that shows Thompson Drive coming in, on each side of that, where it says Thompson Drive, those are duplexes, and they both. There's one more that shows Thompson Drive a little better. It's a pond going parallel. There you go. That's a duplex. Oh, I guess I'm pointing it out there that anybody can see, but the two lots that flank the Thompson Drive street, they both come out onto Netherwood.
Does anybody on the Plan Commission have any comments? Anybody?
This is Jeannie. I'm with you, John. I really think that this entire parcel needs to have some sort of master plan. I'd really hate to develop it piecemeal because we don't know the stormwater, we don't know all of the pieces. I'd really like to see a master plan before we start approving pieces of it.
What are the elements of the master plan that are lacking? I mean, we have the land use shown there. What else is needed?
Well, go ahead. Does anybody else want to give some opinion on what needs to be needed? Staff or anybody? What would you like to see?
When our office lays out these kind of projects, and we do a lot of them, in talking with the people who do that kind of work, they would start at the corner of Main and Netherwood and design that building to get the most value and contribution to the character of the village at that corner. And they would typically not want to have any stormwater facilities on that part of the property. And would probably, I mean, you know, the way that the property currently drains, the stormwater facility would naturally go where the duplexes are. And fighting that drives up cost and complications. But regardless, we do have a process for getting a concept plan and then moving towards more detail, which is the plan development process. And it's the process that ensures that a multi-use complicated site that's going to involve more than one parcel, where it all works together as a whole and adds up to something that's better than a commercial piece, a senior housing piece, and several duplexes coming in on their own. And I think that getting to step 3 of the plan development out of 4, so we don't need final precise building layout or precise exterior design. But I think the general development plan, which is step 3, which is the zoning step, combined with a preliminary plat and the information that we get on a preliminary plat regarding utility locations and easement locations and a stormwater management plan. To me, that seems to be the level of treatment that this site deserves and will, you know, create the most value for the public and for the property owners and ultimately for the users of the building. And that would be my recommendation, that this all come in as a general development plan, get approved, we get the preliminary plat, so we have the engineering concepts all nailed down, and pretty accurate information about stormwater management in particular. We have approved curb cut locations that way. We know exactly where the stormwater pond needs to be. May not have all the details on exactly how many cubic feet it needs to store, but we have a ballpark. And that would be my recommendation, regardless of the precise mix of uses, that we ultimately end up with. John, I would agree with what you said, that if I was doing the building, I would put an L-shaped building fronting Main and Netherwood and tuck the parking in behind it where it would be concealed, and we'd have a very attractive building. I think a good example, well, there are many good examples that accomplish that have been built recently.
I concur, and the only thing I'd add to that, and Mike, maybe you'd support this, but virtually all duplexes that are being built now end up as zero lot line CSMs later and I just don't know why, if you're gonna go through all the work to do a preliminary plat and a plat, why you wouldn't just divide those up right off the bat and avoid having to come back with basically 3 CSMs.
Right. And again, given the fact that stormwater is going to end up in that area one way or another,
yep.
Having at least the footprint for those structures identified can work around any stormwater or drainage easements that are needed in that area. But otherwise, I think tackling this as 3 or 4 different projects and starting out with the lowest point of the land getting developed first is not the way to get the most value out of this property.
Right. I think trying to help the property owner here think long-term value and cost of review and everything. I think it does pay whether Jim ends up being the developer for this lot or sells it to somebody else, like you've mentioned, to have a plan that is clear and provides direction and is helpful for cost estimates and all of that, not to mention the number of times that review would need to come back through the planning commission if an approved GDP is on the books that allows Jim or whoever may develop the lot a lot more value. You save that, that time is already behind you and you have an approved plan to, go to market with.
Anybody else have comments? All right. Well, I think that you've got some feedback on what staff and what a few people have said from Plan Commission. So since this is just a conceptual discussion, we would be looking to have some more information from you come back with this as looking at it as a cohesive project rather than something that's just a bunch of parts, if that makes sense. Thank you. Moving on, item D, discussion and possible recommendation to the village board regarding the ETJ review for the Van Campen CSM in the town of Oregon. This is, Elise, you want to give us some background on this?
This is, you saw this CSM a couple of months ago. This is the Van Campen property, Netherwood Road, Honeysuckle Lane. Initially, the CSM just divided along this black circle dotted line to separate the home from the ag parcel below. They do have a potential buyer for that home now, and that buyer would like to have a little bit more land on the residential parcel. So the new line indicated here with the white circles would be the changes to that lot there. And since the original publication of the packet, I did get the letter back from the village engineer, and he's comfortable with all of the changes proposed. So this is just in our ETJ approval area in the town of Oregon.
And Elise, normally we would want to ensure that we have enough dedicated right-of-way for Netherwood Road, because typically before land divisions occur, raw farmland parcels go to the center line of the road. But in this instance, that right-of-way has already been dedicated at 55 feet from the center line, and you can see that dimension here. So historically anyway, unless there's something unusual, that would be the limit of our recommendations. So from my perspective, this looks good to go as well.
Thanks.
So do we need to make a recommendation because it's in the ETJ, or do we not? Because everything's
right. We have the ability to comment and make recommendations, but no ability, aside from the right-of-way dedication, to impose any requirements.
But we should have a motion to approve. Yes.
All right. With that being, go ahead.
Yeah, to recommend to the board.
All right. So with that, I'd take a recommendation to the village board. Would somebody like to make that?
I got another question quick.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Typically, have we not made a motion not to object instead of to say we approve of it on these situations, Mike?
I think technically that is the more appropriate motion, yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was, yeah.
I would make a motion to not to object to the project in our ETJ.
We have the motion not to object to this. Is there a second?
I'll second, Patrick.
Second by Patrick. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, it's all downhill from here. Item 10, communications and miscellaneous business. We're going to move the Plan Commission meeting from the 5th to the 12th due to the election. Just because of joy.
Thank you.
So put it on your calendars. We have no unfinished business. We have no new business. Staff reports. There's status of developments projects. Jeff, you want to give us any update, rundown?
Staff's tired. No, things are going pretty well. You'll see Lincoln Road's going to be wrapping up in the next week, and signals are going up next week on Park and Janesville Street. So, and I don't know if you've noticed, but almost all the development projects have their second lift of asphalt. So we're going into this winter, should have almost everything wrapped up.
And our Highlands of Village Park project should be wrapping up by the end of this month as well.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it, the playground is up now for the most part.
It's got an awesome slide. Haven't tried it yet.
Yes, you have.
We have two reports. We have two
on the way down. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have two staff reports. Anybody have any comments or questions on those?
I just have one question. I highlighted the rezoning portion of Market Street. Where is that area referring to?
That's just in general a future to-do list item, but I imagine we'd be taking a look at both sides of Market Street on either side of Netherwood for potential reuse of some of the older industrial parcels, especially as the library may go in on that site. Moving forward, we imagine a lot more traffic on the Market Street corridor, and just want to think about how that corridor could be best utilized.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Items for future meetings: amending the parking requirements in the zoning code and the street tree requirements. With that being, which is stuff that we've all heard and talked about, so nothing new there. Item 15, adjournment for the Planning Commission. Anybody like to make that motion?
So moved.
So moved by Patrick, second by me. All those in favor of adjourning the Planning Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Jeannie, it's up to you.
Yes, so can I have a motion to adjourn the village board meeting, please?
I'll make that motion.
All right.
Oh, second.
Motion by Jacobson and a second by Peterson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're done.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for leading along.